Welcome back to 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about how to steal land. Stealing land from groups of people is an old practice that began with the use of armies, but has evolved into using space-based laser weapons, weather control, and propaganda campaigns. Social engineering and gaslighting is an important component of the modern usurper's toolkit. Hurricane Helene formed in the Western Caribbean Sea on September 23, 2024. Going back to the year 1947 and running until 1983, Project Cirrus was run by the corporation General Electric under the supervision of the United States government. The goal was to create and steer hurricanes. This was done by injecting silver iodide and dry ice into the outer wall of the hurricane. That decreases the force of the winds that compose the hurricane. From there, they could see that they could steer the hurricanes and even work towards creating hurricanes. Eventually, gag orders were placed on employees of the National Weather Service to prevent whistleblowers from speaking out. Hurricane Helene formed in the Western Caribbean Sea on that day. The Lockheed P-3 WC-103B airplane was spotted flying in the path of the hurricane. That same specialized airplane has been utilized for high-altitude weather manipulation. Beginning on that day, the 23rd of September, when the storm began, it raged until the 26th of September, when the storm finally dissolved. The storm moved inland from the Caribbean Sea, and then it was pushed north toward Kentucky. Then it appears to move unnaturally toward the east into western Tennessee. The excessive rain that was collected in the North Carolina Cowan's Ford Dam was released to prevent the entire dam from collapsing, essentially flooding the area already saturated in the Mountain Lake community of North Carolina. It was considered the lesser of two evils. That excess water made the floods worse. Mountain Lake is within Gaston and Mecklenburg counties, essentially a far northwestern suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina. But it has been noted that these mountaintop areas in Gaston and Mecklenburg counties have been surveyed for lithium mineral deposits.
And gold.
Then, 2 weeks later, after Hurricane Helene was created, this time in the Gulf of Mexico on October the 6th of this year, Hurricane Milton was the first hurricane to ever begin in the Gulf of Mexico since 1888. It made landfall on October the 9th and weakened in its intensity, causing a tornado and heavy rains. Since then, it has died down and dissolved. Now, one very important thing to consider in these two hurricanes is that it displaced thousands of American voters in traditionally Republican voting areas, only 3 weeks before a presidential election.
Two things that you said that sound very similar. You said Milton began in the Gulf Coast, but then you said also that Helene started in the Western Caribbean. That's the same area.
No, it's not. No, Florida separates the two.
No, I get that, but I'm saying most hurricanes start in Africa and work their way across the Atlantic, then hook up. Yeah, I'm just simply saying most hurricanes form over the Atlantic Ocean.
It wasn't spotted in the Atlantic near Africa or Brazil.
We watch it come up the coast or come across,
but you did not hear about this thing until it was right there in the Caribbean Sea.
Like I said, the Gulf and the Caribbean are right next to each other. So I hear what you're saying, but this ain't natural. These motherfuckers don't form on this side of the
Why
Atlantic.
did they form on the exact opposite sides of the same land mass?
Thank you. Now you hear what I'm saying. The other thing is, when you talk about the news cycle, there's some articles I sent to you that we really got a chance to talk about. But you do realize there's flooding in Mexico right now. You do realize there's wildfires in Montana. But all we're hearing about is Helene and is it Milton? I don't want to say the wrong name of but all we hear about these hurricanes that are attacking the same area. And it's really strange that when I say this, don't take it out of context because all these people are important. But I just think it's odd how this hurricane skipped over Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, and went right to Kentucky. Like, so ain't none of these other places getting extreme flooding? Florida? No, there's stuff going on, but their target was Kentucky. The target was, and like I said, the reason for this podcast, we're talking about this is how they're stealing land. Like back in the day when you were black, they would do it through gentrification, offering money to buy up your land for cheap. But now if they create natural disaster and you're desperate for money, and also let's not forget, FEMA does not have the funding for this because they gave all that money to these illegals. This is a real thing. That one black chick that works for the White House is trying to downplay it, but they said literally the reason they don't have enough money to help these people is because they spend all the money on these illegals. $600 million, craziness. And so this was by design. The same thing they did with Maui a year ago, where you got these wildfires, and all of a sudden they're offering these people a couple bucks just for their land.
But the people in North Carolina were only offered $750. And now FEMA is talking about they don't have any money. When weeks before, Mayorkas, the head of Department of Homeland Security, is saying that they're all good for hurricane season.
This was the question. So this reporter was asking these questions about the 750. He says, is 750 a one-time payment? Is that a weekly payment? Is that a monthly payment? What is this 750? And then they said, well, we only had 700. And so literally you had millions to bring these people over here and get them housing, and you pulled that from the FEMA budget. Now that you have a national disaster, natural disaster, how about unnatural disaster? Now that you have this, you can't afford to take care of these people. Now, here's the other thing when they talk about the rescue. So when the people try to do their own rescue and the National Guard went in there, two things happened. So I sent you this article where they filled this A-10 full of water and supplies for Kamala to go down there, right? It was for a photo op. They sent her down there but never sent the plane. Then President Biden wants to go down and survey the area. They're like, you can't go down there because once his plane is in the air, no other planes can go up. So this I want to say, I forgot what his title is, but he was saying that we literally had the choppers ready to go. This is that National Guard brother. He said, white guy, he said, from 11 in the morning to 4 at night, we couldn't go up. And this was the first day that was clear. There was no fog. There was no clouds. But no, Biden went to go survey the area. Once he surveys the area, the next day it's bad again, where we can't go up and help people. And you know, they literally stopped the rescue efforts just so the president can survey it. And like I said, he's explaining, he said, based on how this shit works, can't no other plane be in the air while Air Force One is in the air, or whatever plane he took, a helicopter. So it's just a fucking comedy of errors, but these people are dying. And, you know, I get it. We talked about this on the last podcast. There were some goofy black folks out there talking about there's sundown towns and this is God's retribution and all that. I'm like, well, if that's the case, they should have washed away a lot of other towns. They don't. If God is that particular, but I digress.
Listen, as a guy that lives in the South, I can tell you that these sundown towns, if they are around still, they got to be super fucking tiny. I'm talking about like 4 acres, because they would be on blast by now. Because of my type of work, I travel deep into the South. And I'm not just like on main highways. No, y'all, like I'm down country roads in the mountains, deep in the guts of the South. I've been all up in them guts. And in North Carolina, I've been through Kentucky, I've been in Mississippi, I've been in Alabama, I'm deep in the guts of Georgia, all up in the guts. And I can tell you, if there's these sundown towns, they not making it known, and it's hella hard to find them.
This black girl was adopted. This mixed girl, I guess she moved in with her mom's side of the family, and she lived in a sundown town, and nobody ever said nothing. Look, I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm saying I don't fear that old shit.
See, that to me sounds like something that was drug up by people who don't live in the United States. And when
that's true.
When they're looking for stuff to divide people, they're like, "Oh, let's see in American history what we can find to divide black from white people."
Look, here's the deal. Even
Russian bot farms.
When you first saw the documentary about sundown towns, they weren't in the South. Them motherfuckers was up in Illinois, Iowa. They were up north, Midwest. Yeah. So that was the scary part. Now, second, I've driven all over the South. Don't laugh. I haven't driven all over the Midwest. I've driven from Nebraska, going east. I've been from Nebraska going to
North.
Colorado.
And,
Well, no,
and
no,
north, and you've been up to
nope,
South.
I have not.
You
I've been,
had a personal reason why you had to drive up to the Dakotas.
yeah. I've been to South Dakota a couple times, but like I said, I haven't been all over the Midwest, and that's why I'm kind of laughing because there are pockets of the Midwest that I don't know.
Well, it doesn't matter, man. Don't like these ignorant motherfuckers can catch a bullet like anybody else. It don't matter.
Hold it. We are in agreement.
We can
my
turn
brother.
your town into Rebel Ridge
in 50 seconds. In 50 seconds. But back to what we're saying. Look, we've been seeing this for the past 3 or 4 years where these national disasters happen. And all of a sudden, instead of just helping people, you're buying up their land like you're doing them a favor. And allegedly there's a bunch of lithium deposits or whatever in this area, and they've been there for years, but it was just too much money for them to extract it. But what happens if you have a flood and it washes away the top 10 feet of topsoil and it washes away all the people that live there? All of a sudden, it's easier for you to mine. You don't have to spend as much money to extract it. And also, right now, it's worth it. Back then we weren't dealing with these electric car bullshit that don't even work. But now you have a market. And also we're closing our borders to all these other shit. So yeah, it would make sense for now being the time that they want to take advantage of the situation or move these people off their land illegally. Look, we've seen it over and over in America. This whole place was stolen, but it was stolen by several different means. It wasn't just stolen by, okay, we killed a bunch of Indians. They cheated Indians off their land. They made them sick several times. They had them warring with each other.
All right, check this out. So the Aboriginal people of the United States have been removed from their native lands by the U.S. government and corporations assisting the government. The Trail of Tears was a forced relocation of 60,000 Native Americans from their homelands in the southeastern United States. That's my area. The tribes that were relocated were the Cherokee, Muskogee, Seminole, Chickasaw, and Choctaw. That happened because of the Indian Removal Act signed by President Andrew Jackson. The goal was to acquire Native American land east of the Mississippi River and give the land to white settlers to grow cotton. Take a guess who worked on those cotton plantations? Enslaved Africans.
Enslaved people, because a lot of those Indians were enslaved also. We forget that it was both Native Americans and Africans that did that work. And here's the other part. This is the part that me and you talk about. We talk about off the air. I did that report back in college about who was punished for the Civil War and who was punished for owning slaves. No white man was punished for owning slaves, but Cherokee were. That's why the Cherokees' land was taken from them. See, part of that removal act was the Cherokee who owned slaves.
The Trail of Tears started before the war ended.
So the reason I bring that up is because you got a lot of white folks claiming Cherokee bloodlines. I'm Cherokee. And this white girl broke it down. She's like, I was told by my grandfather, my great-grandfather, that we were Cherokee. She said, how do you think we became Cherokee? She said, we're not Cherokee by blood. These were the Cherokee land lottery. So when the Cherokees were forced removed, when they were being punished for owning slaves, they had lotteries to give away their land to white families and white settlers. When the white families and white settlers came on the property, all they did was move right in the house that was already there, the goods that were in the house, the barn. So all this Cherokee memorabilia and the Cherokee history was sitting there, and they just assimilated it. They just, we're Cherokee because we're on their land. That's how that shit happened. That's fucked up. So these people, she's like, I thought we had Cherokee DNA. We don't have any Native American DNA in us. And she said, but because of that Cherokee land lottery, my great-great-great-grandparents won one of these lotteries. They were given the homestead and everything on it.
Elizabeth Warren?
Was it her? No, I don't think it was her, but shit, that's funny as hell.
That's her kind of people doing shit like that, though.
Yeah, that's why I said it like that. So when we're talking about stealing of land, we're not just talking about somebody stealing a deed from one person. We're talking about official government sanctioned bodies who are doing this. And like the brother just brought up, like Roscoe just brought up the Dawes rolls. That was a whole nother thing, because we tell you on this podcast, a lot of black folks were just Native American. They weren't slaves, they weren't inbred or none of this other bullshit. And so what the Dawes brothers did, there was three brothers that went around and categorized the tribe. If you were light enough, they said you were a tribe. If you were dark, they said you were either freemen or slaves. And so just that designation right there is a way for them to steal land, and because they're saying, well, you really didn't belong to the tribe. And we talk about the Seminole tribe. The Seminole tribe moved 3 or 4 times. Look, here's what we're saying. They've been stealing land from natives for years, especially anything that was close to a river, anything that had minerals, anything that had resources. And this is just one thing in a long line of history. And we're not talking about Native Americans. We're talking about poor white people right now in Kentucky. I guess I'm not saying that it matters what race is being done to, but these are Americans who are being cheated out their land. See, that's the other part. It's one thing just to take it. The second, like, all right, well, you signed the contract. You took $750. You took $10,000 for this 300-acre whatever. So, like I said, this what they're doing is they're de-stressing the land, putting people in a bad predicament, then snatching it up for either cheap or next to nothing.
The federal government, backed by state militias and the U.S. military, used violence and intimidation to accomplish their goal of relocating those tribes along the Trail of Tears out of the southeastern United States into Oklahoma. When they got there, they found that it was hard to grow anything on that soil because it was red clay soil. And it was hard to grow any food in this. So it was like, oh, this is barren land. They brought us to hell.
Well, it's 2 reasons. You got to remember, Oklahoma was going to be called Lincoln Territory. They were going to give it to niggas first. They was going to give it to black folks first. Then they reneged and gave it to the natives, which that's crazy. Y'all screwing 2 minorities over. But yeah, if you ever been there, it stains your clothes, messes the water up. But you see this red clay. It's not topsoil. We're from the Midwest, where we got like 2 inches of topsoil.
Dirt. We got black dirt. And here's let me straighten something out for people. Do not be afraid when you hear all these quote unquote specialists and scientists and experts talking about they don't have any more topsoil and we have an inch of topsoil. Listen, you can make your own topsoil. Cut down trees, compost food, compost all these things, and it breaks down and it becomes dirt. If you go into the forest and if you dig down and you like less than like 6 inches, and you do a mineral analysis on that soil, it's trees and leaves and insects and dead animals and anything that died and decomposed right there in that forest. There's a practice that Germans have been doing for about maybe 200 something years. It's called hugelkultur. So I once helped this wealthy family do this. We made these long raised beds, and we cut down trees and we chopped the trees up, and we took the leaves that we could rake up and we put them all into these raised beds. And then we would put compost in there with it as well. And this was not to be touched for 3 years.
Oh, no, 3 years?
3 years. The goal was to not touch it for 3 years. Came back in 3 years, it was soft. You could you could stick your hand down in it, and it was like soft. It was like foam. And I'm like, this is how you make dirt. So let me tell you something. For all those people out there who want to start their own homestead, and you may be in an area like Georgia where it's red clay, or Oklahoma where there's red clay, or even Alabama, wherever you are, there's clay soil. You can make your own topsoil. All right. It might take a while. When you first start, you got to order pallets of black dirt. That's fine. That'll get your first 2 crops going. But what I'm telling you is have those large, long raised beds, those like 20-foot long, 5 feet wide raised beds that you're making is your own dirt, and don't touch it for 3 years. And when you come back on year 3, you got fresh dirt. And then throw some worms in there, because the worms going to get in there and they're going to shit and they're going to create worm castings. But their worm castings are rich in minerals. So the problem about the world we live in now is that there's so much information, but gaslighting and propaganda is
Come
guiding
on.
you toward the wrong information and
Oh,
not
man, it's deep.
making you focus on the essential information that you need to edify your home and your family compound.
Slow down. I got a lot of shit to say.
Go.
First things first. When I was a kid in Memphis, I would go visit my aunt and uncle. My uncle died first, but he always behind the garage, he had a big metal barrel full of compost. So when he cut the grass, rake the leaves, he started that shit years ago. And like you said, he would dump half of it out. He never dumped the whole thing. You dig what I'm saying? And then he would start it over again.
Because that's a bank account.
Yeah. Now, there's so much shit I got to talk about. So you
gaslighting.
No. Yes, that's where I was going to go. One of the hardest things about being married is teaching your wife how to prioritize, because what she feels is important, you don't always feel is important, and what I feel is important. But that's what's happening with the gaslighting. We have the wrong priorities. We literally are like, AI is over here, AI, and you're all focused on this shit. But there's regular shit that you need to be doing, creating your own topsoil. What my brother just talked about. I just sent you a video that doctor was talking about. He said we knew in 1936 that the minerals in the soil were in America were gone. That's why the food is no good no more. He said, but you got to find these old forest pools and these prehistoric forests and stuff like that, and you pull that nutrients and you spread it all over the place. Or he said there was one. He said this guy was mining. He was terrible at it. He couldn't find any gold. He couldn't find anything. But he noticed that whenever he drank this funky water, his arthritis went away. So he had to find the source of the water. It was an old prehistoric forest that this water ran through, and he realized that it had those phytonutrients in there. And so when he started drinking that, he got better. But he also used that water, and shit started growing. This soil is so depleted, but they do this shit on purpose, and it's so crazy that when you sit here and realize, like, do you know why people have allergies and pollen is so bad? Because they only plant male trees. So they plant male trees for two reasons. One, the pollen count is higher. You get sick and go to the doctor. And two, male trees don't bear fruit. Because if you planted male and female trees, then that fruit would be hanging from the tree, and you could just pick it and walk to work and eat that. This shit is so much by design. It's crazy. And like my brother just told you how to make topsoil. That's a real thing. You can control your environment. That's what you need to be worried about, creating better food and putting the nutrients back in the soil, so the food that you eat, you don't need to go to the doctor. You don't need to take a multivitamin. You don't need to do that shit.
But yet people spend thousands of dollars every year on maintaining a sterile piece of green space in front of their house and behind their house, and yet they're not growing a single fruit tree or even strawberries on that piece of land. But yet, then you're sick with all these foods that have glyphosate in them, and the wheat and the flour that you eat that is in the food with all this sugar is poisoning your gut biome. So it's giving you IBS, and messing up your digestive system and giving you all these colon problems,
asthma, and all this other shit.
And it's weakening your immune system when all you got to do is just plant a tree with fruit that will bear fruit and start growing. This is what you do. Grow one fruit tree, and on the side have two vegetables. For every fruit tree, you should have two types of vegetables growing in your backyard, because you will have a balance of minerals and phytochemicals. Beneficial.
Here's the deal. How about this? Stop spraying the dandelions in your yard and eat them.
My mother would go into the backyard and pull the dandelions up, and
by hand.
She would make a salad from the greens. Now,
look,
for all of you who are aware, I'm talking about all my people, with the head wraps and the oils and the incense. Don't know shit. No, wait, don't diss them, because they know about the herbs, okay? And they know that dandelion root and the leaves are medicinal. Go ahead.
The root cures damn near everything, but even if you
it's excellent an excellent cleanser for fasting,
Yeah.
for your liver
Well,
and your kidneys.
that tea is good for asthma. The roots are good for damn near everything else, from cancer to all this other stuff. But the point I'm making is that you get in this competition and you grow this grass that don't benefit nobody. And even back in the day, the grass was for your damn cattle and your livestock. But that grass, when you see that dandelion, sometimes that's you manifesting what you need. All these women, y'all don't be realizing how powerful you are. You got 2 kids with asthma. Next thing you know, you got a yard full of dandelions and you cutting them. That's you manifesting the cure to your own kid's disease. We talked about this.
From World War II until 1971, the U.S. government was the sole purchaser of uranium ore. This led to the widespread mining in the southwestern U.S. The mining of the uranium ore resulted in significant disruption of Native American communities. So, you have this drilling for uranium that displaces these people, and it has been poisoning their water supply. Now, fracking has also poisoned the water supply of not just Native American people and their lands, but also everybody else living near those fracking sites. But moving closer to that, in April of 2016, members of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe began a protest of the Dakota Access Pipeline. This pipeline runs 1,172 miles from the Bakken oil fields in North Dakota to southern Illinois, crossing under the Missouri and Mississippi rivers near the Standing Rock Indian Reservation. The Standing Rock Sioux tribe considered the pipeline a serious threat to the region's water. The pipeline runs through several sacred sites for the Sioux Indian tribe. These include ancient burial sites and places of historical significance. On July the 6th, 2020, a federal judge ruled that the pipeline must be shut down pending a new environmental review.
So I remember when we were kids and they first built the Alaskan pipeline, and I'm a little kid. I'm 8, 9 years old watching the morning news, and they said that the pipeline had these oh my God, the seals would last for 25, 30 years. So I'm a little kid, like, I don't know, that's a long time away. It's 25, 30 years later. But what we didn't know, that thing was leaking the very first day. The very first day they started piping oil down that motherfucker, it was leaking, fucking up the Alaskan environment way back then when we were kids. So I'm assuming that they're better at this pipeline thing. Second, my only beef with this whole, with these Indians these natives who are complaining, how did they build it on? For them to even come on Native American property, they had already got somebody authorized that shit. You can't go on that property without their permission. So a lot of that shit goes through one tribal elder. They say yeah, the other one says no, and this is how they said. There's no way you can build a pipeline on Indian property without some kind of permission. You can't even go on there. So that's why I be tripping. Like, okay, so is this a real argument, or is this some Indian stuff that we didn't know about?
Okay. So, of course, we have sellouts in every race, and they have sellouts in the Native American race as well.
Period.
But now, when it comes to black folks, there's something that needs to be revisited that we've talked about in a previous episode before. But I will revisit it now with the Seneca Village and the New York African Society for Mutual Relief. In 1808, a black carpenter named William Hamilton started the NYACMR, which is the New York African Society for Mutual Relief.
What year was it?
1808.
God damn.
That was started with prominent black residents of New York City. The group purchased several acres between West 82nd Street to West 89th Street. By 1832, 10 homes were built. The black people had gardens, they raised livestock, they fished in the Hudson River for food, and got drinking water from a nearby spring. By 1850, there were 50 homes, 3 churches, a cemetery, and an all-black school. In 1845, there were 100 black men in the state that could vote. 10 of them lived in Seneca Village. 3 years later, in 1853, New York State passed a law that seized. New York passed a law. Damn it. New York passed a law that seized 775 acres of land in Manhattan to create the country's first ever public park. The plans took land from 59th Street to 106th Street. The people of Seneca Village were given until 1857 to vacate the land. Some people filed lawsuits to keep their land, but every single suit was rejected because they had control over the courts and the judges. The only thing that remains of Seneca Village is a plaque that acknowledges that it once existed there.
It's an obelisk with a plaque on it, and when you see it, you don't even know the relevance of it. This is so fucked up. See, this is what we mean by racism.
No, but see, it's an obelisk. That's an insult because the obelisk is a
yes, yeah. Obelisk is an African symbol. Yes, it is an insult,
and it's a penis.
It's a penis. Yes. This is the difference between racism and prejudice and bigotry. I don't care if you're prejudiced. Don't really care if you're racist. But this right here is a prominent black community that was uprooted for a fucking park. And these people ain't bothered.
Gentrification. Gentrification.
Here, let me get this out. See, here's the issue. People think that racism is a cop stopping you. That could be racism. People think racism is the Klan burning a cross in your yard. No, racism is destroying a prominent black community where everybody's living great. Because y'all swear to God we can't do it on our own. Y'all swear to God we can't run our businesses. But whenever you see Ida B. Wells when they talk about her friend that had these two men that had grocery stores in Memphis that were killed because they were more successful than the white stores. This is the shit I'm talking about. And then you sit here and let foreigners come in, give them small business loans. We just talked about this shit. Give them small business loans. They can start their business, but the same brother who lives in that community tries to get a small business loan. Either you don't have enough money, you don't have enough credit, you don't have the proper business plan, they fuck you. So that's racism. Racism ain't disliking a nigga. Racism is disrupting a black man's ability, a black woman's ability to be great. All you do is put speed bumps in front of me. So when you sit here and you read up and you see Central Park and you see how big it is from the sky, when you look at New York sky, think about that black community that was destroyed and how many people live there.
That's underneath.
I digress, my brother. Yes, or how many of these motherfucking lakes were used to flood these black communities? See, that's what y'all don't get. This is some systematic shit. This was done. See, y'all think, oh, that was in New York. That's the North. They did that shit in the North. They did that shit in the Midwest. They did that shit in the West. They did that in the South and Southeast, where they covered up whole communities with lakes. These lakes.
Okay.
You literally will go in the lake and you will see that shit.
Check it out.
Sorry.
Oscarville, Georgia. The town of Oscarville was founded after the Civil War by recently freed Africans. The town had 1,100 black residents that managed to build a healthy community with churches, schools, and small businesses. On September the 5th, 1912, a 22-year-old white woman named Ellen Grice claimed two black men tried to rape her, but were unsuccessful because they were scared away by her mother. The Forsyth County Sheriff arrested 5 black men for the alleged assault. News of the attack and arrest caused quite a stir in the surrounding communities. A vocal black preacher named Grant Smith appealed to the sheriff to release the men. He claimed there wasn't much evidence to hold all 5 men accountable for the assault, and also suggested that one of the men could have already been in a consensual relationship with Grice. Many whites were outraged by Smith's allegations, and an angry mob beat and horse-whipped the preacher on the steps of the courthouse, almost taking his life. Horse-whipped. A week later, on September the 12th, 1912, an 18-year-old white woman named May Crow was raped and beaten in the Big Creek community of Forsyth County, Georgia. The next morning, Crow's body was found half naked, bloody, and hidden under a pile of leaves. Her skull had been bludgeoned with a stone, but she was alive and barely breathing. Searchers would allegedly find a small pocket mirror at the scene of the crime that was said to belong to Ernest Knox, a 16-year-old black boy from Cumming, Georgia. Knox was arrested at his home and then subjected to a mock lynching, which led to his coerced confession for the attack on Crow. As word of the attack on Crow spread and the confession by Knox, whites became increasingly angry. It wasn't long before a lynch mob formed in front of the jailhouse where Knox was being detained. Officers had to sneak Knox out of the back door late that evening, just to keep him from being hanged. He was taken to the jail in Atlanta for his protection, but would soon stand trial for the attack. The next day, 4 additional men were arrested and taken into custody, suspected to be accomplices to the 16-year-old, all of them black. Soon another angry mob of more than 2,000 whites had stormed the county jail, gaining access to the cells. They shot and killed Rob Edwards, who was one of the accomplices, and dragged his body from the jailhouse and hung him from a telephone pole in the town square. Ernest Knox and Oscar Daniel were both found guilty of the rape of May Crow. They were sentenced to death by hanging, even though it was illegal by the state law at the time. 8,000 whites congregated in the town square of Cumming to watch 2 teenage boys publicly hang for allegedly a crime they never truly had the opportunity to fight. It was after this hanging that the terror would begin to spread as a white group of terrorists known as the Night Riders would make it their mission to run every black person they came across out of town. Oscarville would end up being one of their main targets. Over the short period of just a few years, 98% of its black residents would end up leaving their homes or being murdered for refusing to move. Black property deeds found their way into the hands of white neighbors without any bill of sale or transfer. This effectively allowed many whites to steal the land once owned by their black counterparts when they were driven out by the Night Riders. More than 1,100 blacks would lose their livelihood, and in little time, the once functioning African-American town of Oscarville would be a ghost town. Over time, pieces of the land would be sold to the government, and by 1950, a plan to build Lake Lanier was in full effect. Soon, the entire town of Oscarville would be underwater, intentionally flooded in conjunction with the Beaufort Dam to support the growing demand for water supply to the nearby towns. The resulting reservoir was named after Sidney Lanier, a poet, musician, and who was also a Confederate private. In the end, construction would destroy more than 50,000 acres of farmland and displace more than 250 families. It would also relocate 20 cemeteries and their corpses in what some may see as an attempt to erase the sins of the past. Now, supernatural sidebar. People drown in Lake Lanier all the time. Now, what is strange about their deaths is that these are people who are avid swimmers.
Healthy.
You have people who are swimmers at a collegiate level that have died in Lake Lanier in what appears to be calm, still waters. But what many have reported when swimming in this lake is that the water is thick, like
it gets heavy. It's
like
difficult,
syrup, and it's hard to swim in there.
Look, here's my deal.
I have been to Lake Lanier many times. I haven't experienced any of these things, God willing. But I can tell you, there's definitely a vibe to that place.
Look, when we were kids, there was a movie that came out called Tales from the Hood, and they had these little dolls that were Nicklets that was inhabited by these spirits of slave. Look, if what you said is true, when I said you, I mean white people in our fucked up education, that there was so many dead slaves and y'all did this much shit to us. You can't tell me that our spirits ain't everywhere fucking with y'all. You can't, because look, if y'all do me dirtball and I could come back from the other side and fuck with you, nigga, I will fuck up your clocks. I'll make you late to work. I'll spoil your milk. I'm gonna do every guy. I'm a petty motherfucker. You trust me. I'll be fucking with you from another side. but like I said, but this is a cultural thing. The worst one is the one that we always talk about. In 1933, what they find an Egyptian tomb in Tennessee, and they grab some of the artifacts, but they flood that area because they didn't want y'all to know that there was black folks already over here. And the other rumor, again, I've never been to the Grand Canyon, but they say the whole Grand Canyon is an Egyptian site. You know, I've never been there, so I can't argue it. But they're saying that that's an Egyptian site. And here's the two things that if you ever get weird, there's parts of the Grand Canyon that you're not allowed to go, but who has rights to it? NASA. Who has rights to the inside of the pyramids and the Sphinx? NASA. Why the fuck does this space organization have rights to these two different?
Because they are a Masonic supernatural organization that practices magic.
True. Hold it. That is
and
true.
It's part of the reason why they launch on specific days, and all of their launches and their vehicles and their programs are named after historical people or events
Apollo,
or deities
yeah, I got you.
or gods.
Yeah. But the point I'm trying to make is that the two sites are related. Don't think that NASA would have the rights to certain parts of the Grand Canyon if it didn't have something to do with ancient Egypt, or as you just stated, something Masonic or some magic or something. So we need to come to terms with the fact that those two sites are related. The fact that NASA has rights to the Grand Canyon and NASA has the rights to the inside of the Sphinx and the inside of the Great Pyramid, that should let you know right there that them two things are related. That's the dirty glove or whatever you want to call it. So, but again, this is the problem when you're removed from your land. You don't know who you are. You don't know what's yours and what belongs to somebody else.
When you're removed from your land, you truly lose your sovereignty because you don't have real bargaining chips anymore.
Well,
and it's hard to feed your people. So then you rely on other people to feed you, and then they can feed you poison for decades, for centuries.
Look, when we were kids, one of the things we learned about George Washington Carver planting sweet potatoes and peanuts and all this other stuff was because it put the sweet potatoes, he rotated the crops because the peanuts took the nutrients out the ground, but the sweet potatoes put it back. Well, that's the shit we learned. So if he's talking about that, then how come it still doesn't apply to this day? Because it does apply, but we've been brainwashed to think that Gatorade is real drink. We've been brainwashed to think that these things that are food-like substances. See, edible and you should eat it ain't the same thing. This bitch could have herpes in her pussy. It's edible. I shouldn't eat it. And that's the whole problem that we got going on right now. We can't distinguish between edible and what's actually real food. And when you were mentioning vegetables, don't forget, a lot of these vegetables are hybrids. You want the vegetables that God made. You want the fruits that God made. You don't want the ones that were put together to be created. And we don't understand that like half the food we eat, half the vegetables we eat were created in the Mediterranean 1,200 years ago. That the church, like when you first hear Dr. Sebi talk about the church and had made food, I'm like, yeah, man, this old nigga crazy. Do your research. A lot of the vegetables we eat were all derived from one single plant that came from the Mediterranean. And once you start combining them, then that shit don't grow naturally, and then them people control broccoli and cauliflower and all that shit that you think is real because it comes from the earth. It didn't come from the earth. It came from a laboratory. But that's, again, like I said, Roscoe is trying to tell y'all that your land is the most precious thing you got besides your bloodline and your kids. You know, is your land because that's your tie to your past. That's how you make money. Also, you know, you can sell the trees off it. You got mineral rights. You got groundwater. You got all this other stuff.
You can make more soil.
And so the stealing of one's land is so much more diabolical than just some monetary gain. You know, if there are lithium deposits in Kentucky, those mineral rights should belong to those people. And I tell these people, like I said, I learned from somebody, this old lady in Langston where I went to school at. She helped raise me. She said, I only sell the top 2 inches of topsoil. So when all them white folks bought her land, they started pumping oil, she would give them a cease and desist notice because she maintained the mineral rights. If you are selling your land, you have the right to keep your mineral rights. Now, I know they tell you that they're impossible to get and all this other bullshit. But if you're going to sell land for super cheap, I would only sell the top 2 inches of topsoil. I would not be selling my mineral rights. And that's what this is about. If these people are after your mineral rights, you need to find a way to maintain those, because that's how you're going to feed your family and pay your bills and look out for your people for the next 100 years,
Okay.
200 years.
So, on August 8th, 2023, Lahaina, Maui, a town in Hawaii with a population of 13,000 people, was almost completely burned to the ground, with the exception of any structure that had a blue roof on it. 2,000 people were missing. There is speculation that weather-controlled technology, along with directed energy weapons, were used simultaneously to start the fires. Cliff Mass, an atmospheric sciences professor at the University of Washington, simulated the Maui windstorm and said the combination of fuels, strong winds, and ignition sources is a common setup for destructive wildfires. He says there's a real story for Californians here, because what happened in Maui is what happened in the Marshall Fire, is what happened at the Paradise Fires. They're all the same thing. There was a book that was published August 10th, 2 days after the fires in Maui. Not a pre-order book, but a fully published physical book. This can only be possible if this book had been written well before the fires actually happened, months before the fires had happened. The book, titled Fire and Fury, was written by Dr. Miles Stone. It is almost as if this is a script. This is telling them how we're going to do it. This is what's going to happen. So, go back to 3 episodes to the show Karmic Consent. Karmic Consent. They have to tell you what they're doing.
Hey, what I heard somebody say, which I have not found it in the Bible, what they said was Jesus told Satan he could have this world, but you must tell him what you're going to do first. And I'm like, I ain't ever seen that. I've heard somebody say something similar, but if that's the case, that's why they have to tell you. There's a covenant that they have to tell you what they're doing. And once you understand that.
But now, go back to what we were talking about with spiritual hygiene and spiritual mapping, and how in spiritual mapping we talk about there has to be 4 different things, like 4 different levels of sin, iniquity, right? You have to have money worship or idolatry.
Mm-hmm. Idolatry.
You have to have sexual deviance. You have to have broken covenants. Right?
These are promises that weren't kept. These are agreements that were done that ain't been fulfilled. Somebody ain't lived up to their part of the bargain.
Right, but that's one of the things we're talking about here is a broken covenant, right? I mean, yeah, they tell people that what they're doing and everything, but a broken covenant is what happens. And bloodshed. So bloodshed, sexual perversion, idolatry, and broken covenants. And these are the 4 types of iniquity that can create a demonic stronghold on the land. Again, iniquity is a pattern of sin. So 4 patterns of sin, and you get the demonic stronghold. So, if people forget, there are famous people who practice the dark arts. Neil Patrick Harris.
We come on with it. We just said this.
On the TV show Know Your History, claims to practice magic and have witch ancestors. Now, we ain't saying, dark or light, but that shit can go either way real fast.
Look, we also know that he had a Halloween party where he had a meat cake that was supposed to be
the corpse of Amy Winehouse.
What was the point? And then, so this was like 8-9 years ago, and now he's like apologizing for it, but people keep bringing it up. So like, what were you trying to say? What were you trying to get at? Because that's a covenant. Look, when you go to church, you drink of the blood of Christ, you eat the bread. You're not eating Christ. You're eating of the body. That's a representation. He's doing the same thing. He's having a covenant. He's literally having some kind of ritualistic something going on. And he was, it's too soon? Not too soon. How about wrong? That would never be appropriate. And the fact that just if you find the episode Know Your Roots or whatever it was called, And you see his response when he found out one of his ancestors, his 12th grandmother, was burnt at the stake for witchcraft. He was not upset. He was more elated. He was more well, she took one for the team.
But
I'm like,
that's an edification. It basically
yes.
let him know that his entire lineage has been practicing magic for hundreds of years.
Maybe not his entire lineage, but he thinks he's on the right track. He feels, and the thing was, somebody taught him that. He was told by somebody that this was cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, because clearly he doesn't feel any kind of guilt or remorse or
But
uncomfort.
it's also genetic that you have this predisposition towards
Bullshit.
bending the will to accomplish what you want. Manipulation.
Look, what we're saying is that taking of your land is so much more than just monetary and financial gain. You understand what I'm saying?
So Herman Andaya was the head of the Maui Emergency Management System, and he had been under fire for not activating the disaster sirens during the week of the wildfire response. He resigned, citing health reasons. The system was created after the 1946 tsunami that killed more than 150 people on the Big Island, and his website says that they may be used for alerting people about fires. So it's built into it. Like, you're supposed to use it for tsunamis, or you can use it for stuff that's happening on the land, letting people know, hey, there's major shit going down, be careful.
Yeah, at least you know something's going on. You might not know what it is exactly, but you know, like, hey, let me turn my TV on, find out what's going on. Let me check on my people. Let me check on my family. We grew up, nowadays, they do it on like the first Wednesday of the month. They test the siren. I remember when we were kids, when they do it like on like Sunday or Saturday morning, they would test the sirens, and it was once a month, and they made sure the motherfuckers worked. Now, that could be because we got more tornadoes than the average place, but I just remember being a kid.
Also, that was the time of the Cold War, and where, a nuclear war could break out. It was way more possible.
It's called civil service sirens.
It's the early warning system.
Yeah, it's not the bad weather sirens. It's the civil service sirens. So this goes back to World War II. What my brother's telling you, that they weren't just for tornadoes. Therefore, okay, there's an air raid. Shut your motherfucking lights off. You know what I'm saying? So these Japanese can't figure out where you at. That kind of thing. So they had a much bigger purpose than what we use them for now.
Exactly. So, almost a year now, 1 year, more than a year, 1 year after October 7, 2023 attack on Israel from Hamas, the Palestinian towns destroyed in the Israeli military response are still destroyed and vacant. And you hear these people talking about from the desert to the sea. They talk about this all the time.
They're taking somebody's land. They're taking somebody's land again.
Right. And they want to develop it and make it a tourist destination. Now, but what does it sound like? This happens in the Dominican Republic. This happens in Jamaica. This happens in the Bahamas. There's people in these areas. And there was something on, I think, Instagram recently, and some white person was making some type of like vlog, and these like black people were sitting there just like, making lunch, like they just went fishing, and they're sitting there eating a lunch on the shore, and some white woman is like making a vlog talking about, this area can be developed and turned into a tourist resort, and they're looking at her like, bitch, this is our home. Like, what are you talking about?
Mind your own business, bitch. Roscoe, there's something that you left out that's very important about Israel and Palestine. So there's two things that happen on Palestinian land that are important. The first one is, this is where Jesus Christ was born, on Palestinian land, in the current Palestine. The other thing is, you do know, we talked about this before, they found natural gas reserves. Some of the largest natural gas reserves in the area are under that Palestinian land. Once the Israelis found out about that, then they started talking about, we got to get rid of these people again. So look that up. I don't want to say it's one of the largest in the world, but it's a very large natural gas deposit under Palestine.
What's crazy is the same type of violence and intimidation that was used on the Native Americans is being used on these people. And now, I'm not going to sit here and say that nothing was done wrong and these people have never been fighting before. I get all that. That's true.
Yep.
But like the blatant stealing of land is what's going on here. Like you create this thing, Hamas, created by the no. It was created by the Israeli intelligence agency.
Yeah.
And Mossad. So then you create this so that you have a boogeyman that you can fight and use to get money from the United States, billions of dollars. And then let's talk about like the fact that all these billions of dollars have been given to Ukraine and their leader is shown to be corrupt and their whole thing is a waste of time. And all this bullshit with the Middle East and all these people fighting each other, but they're getting billions of dollars from the U.S. This dude Netanyahu walks into Congress and he gets a standing ovation. I'm like, for what?
Okay, I got one for you. So so Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had a border bill. They had a bunch of money for the border, right? Look this bill up. It's going to piss you off. So what they keep saying, all these Republicans didn't vote for it. Do you know why they didn't vote for it, Mr. Roscoe? So many like billions of dollars, right? Only 11% went to the border. Where do you think the other 89% went?
Where?
Ukraine and Israel. So it's a bill for like $10 billion.
They're hiding it in plain sight because people don't read.
So only 600 million went to the border. The rest went to Ukraine, and then another 15-20% went to Israel. So that's why people don't want to vote for these, because once you read them, remember Ron Paul, that they said, "Hey, Mr. Paul, you never vote for these bills." He said, "I read them." They're telling you this is how they hide money. This is how they called it a border bill, but literally that was a package to send more money overseas. And people are getting sick of sending money overseas when you're over here starving. People are sick of you sending money overseas. Look, I want them to live. I don't want nobody to die over some bullshit. But I think it's wrong when I got people over here dying. When you sit here and realize that the FEMA budget was used up on illegal aliens. And look, people are like, well, we need a fast track for our citizenship. I'm like, okay, but even that, you still limit how many people come in. You still have to secure your borders. I'm not no hypocrite, but many of our ancestors were forced to come over here. So, you know what I'm saying? So that's what they call slavery now, forced immigration, shit like that. You're trying to rewrite it. The bottom line, when you don't know history, then you could be taken advantage of, and your land can be stolen, and your kids can be put into servitude, and all kinds of crazy shit can go down. And when you sit here and try to tell people like, hey, this person ain't good for us. I don't like the other person, but I'm just trying to tell you that the person you say is like you ain't necessarily like you. Don't even like you. How's that sound? So you got to be careful. But stealing of land, you fuck up legacies for years to come. When people don't know where they come from, they don't have an attachment to the land.
But what also can you do? You can also create a fake narrative through gaslighting and propaganda that this never happened the way you think it is. And these people should pull themselves up by their bootstraps because they're just lazy and that's just how they are. Wait a minute. Yo, blow that smoke up your own ass.
Look, like when you be on Facebook and you see somebody say some racial shit like, oh, the niggas deserve it, or were they black? I don't like black people. And I'd be like, that's some Russian bot. But even if it ain't, I don't have a problem with that guy not liking me. I have no problem. But don't make it because you don't like me. Don't make it seem like you're better than me, because you're not. Because if you sit here and look at history, which you whitewashed, when you look at history, you are a footnote in history. I am history. My people have been here longer, created more, and done more. You steady lie. You're the ones that create this fake narrative, this matrix of bullshit. So if that's the case, then that's just you subscribing to your own bullshit. Some people like to smell of their own shit. You know that, right? And so that's what it is. You like to smell of your own bullshit.
Well, Piccolo player is a motherfucker. But one thing to keep in mind is that this continues to happen. The only problem is that now they are attempting to silence people who will point out the dirt that they are doing. censorship is real and it's back, and it keeps coming back, especially in a technocratic society, because they control the technology. They do their best to
It's much
silence
more
you.
thorough. Yeah, there's more. They're more thorough at the messages that get out. Like you, we're when we were kids, the word censorship was like a bad word. Now, censorship is a daily occurrence.
Now, people talk about Elon Musk and how he's a bad guy, and he is doing some bad guy shit. But I will say, the fact that he bought Twitter and he's allowing people to like say whatever, that's actually a good thing. There's propaganda on there also. So because the bot farms are like joining in to like sow more division. But imagine what 2024 would look like if he did not buy Twitter. There'd be a lot more censorship going on right now.
Yeah, we would have no place to stick stuff out there. Like if you go on Twitter right now, you can see all kinds of videos and articles. But if you post that exact same video or article to Facebook, they will pull it down immediately, and they won't tell you why. They just say it doesn't fall within our practices. I'm dealing with that shit right now. Facebook is getting on my motherfucking nerves. Shit.
Why? What are they doing?
Every time I post anything from Twitter, they say they won't post it.
So what you should start doing is downloading the videos and then just reposting it as a video.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
You know what I mean? Because then, they can see the link and they can see, because when you send a link, you're sending metadata attachments. And so they can see like where it came from and like what type of interactions people are having with that link. So then if you download it and then you post it as a fresh video, then it's something different, which is why I encourage you people all the time to download these videos that people send you that have useful information, because they are deleting the internet. They are deleting the internet and censoring people. There's this whole thing about the dead internet. Go and look it up. It's how they shut people up, how they hide the truth, how they hide things about how this land has been stolen so many times, and why we got to continue to write physical books so that people can put them on their shelves and be like, all right, while you motherfuckers are like burning the books on the internet, I have these books that I can loan to people to read so they can enrich their mind and continue the African griot storytelling tradition of telling stories, telling the truth, passing along to more generations, so that they will understand that these motherfuckers are stealing people's land, but they're also stealing your sovereignty. And that's really important.
It's stealing your history. Look, book burning is a tool of the oppressor. We know this. So it's so crazy that we don't recognize what is being done digitally. You understand what I'm saying? Like book burning is something that they've done. Catholic Church, Nazism, all these motherfuckers, but they book burn.
To wrap it up, stealing land. You have to do your research, and you have to let people know about it, and you have to do something about it. Look, that's all I got. We out. Peace.
Yo, holla back.